So, hello all, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, based on wherever you are. So, with this series, we are talking about what's available in the preview of 2024 release wave 1. And today, we'll be talking about one new feature, which is support for multiple extension to the same target, an extension and target in same app, which is a little bit confusing as you read it. And it took me a while to understand what this is. And then I went into searching why this is, because there's a lot of changes that's happening for the developers with this particular feature. So in this particular video, we'll go through first what it is and then why it is, because it's very important to understand why Microsoft is bringing such kind of changes. And that's completely my theory as well as whatever I have learned by reading about it. So how do you know about this feature? So what you do, go to your VS Code, and if the black theme doesn't work for you, let me know into the comments. Going forward, I'll then use the new theme. If you remember in the earliest videos of this series, we did talk about how you switch to the pre-release version of it. When you switch to the pre-release version, you also get a change log available. That's just a log of changes that are done on this particular extension. When you open it, the first change that you see for version 13, which is your 2024 release wave 1, the first title that you see is support for multiple extension to the same target, an extension and target in the same app. Now let's read through what happens. Microsoft have expanded the support for extension object to help achieve better separation of concern in large apps. The following changes has been made. Extensions can now exist in the same app as their target. And then multiple extension of the same target can exist in the same app. We'll see what that means. For table extension in the same app as a target, the fields and the keys will be moved to the base table to prevent SQL join at the runtime. Since extension objects from a given app are applied to the target, following the extension object ID, the following compiler validation was introduced. The base object cannot reference member of the extended object. An extension object can reference from other extension objects in the same app only if other extension have a lower object ID. So it is still confusing, I think. So to clarify it, what I've done here is I have this a simple app built in BC 23 wave 2, which as of today contain a table extension to the customer table where we are adding one field, and then it contain a new table, completely new table. Now till Business Central 23 release wave 2, if I try to add a extension to table called customer, and even if I name it differently, let's do this SDH1, and then if I try to increase the number so that my field ID is unique and call it as demo field 1. Let's do it code, let's do it 20 and customer content. Let's finish this. Okay. So what you'll notice that both the objects now have compilation issues. One is the table extension 101 and the other is table extension 100, and both says that the extension object cannot be declared because there is already another extension for the target customer on this particular app. Okay, let's say one more thing. Now I'm again trying to add an extension, but this time for this table, which is part of my app. So if I try to do a table extension again, and this time I would call it as SDH, this, just for the namesake, and then let's add a field called primary key of type code 20 customer content. Let's finish this. What happens now that this extension also gives you a warning, which is that the extension object cannot be declared because there is already a table in the same extension. So you cannot, till now, until Business Central 2023 release wave 2, can have two table extensions or page extensions to the same object at the same time. And you cannot have the actual table, which is this, and the extension table in the same app. Now let's do this. Let's copy this. Where is that? Let's copy this folder from this app. I'm just copying it on my other screen. And let's go ahead and paste it into my BC24 app. So let's do here, and let me paste it in this. So the same object set is here. But now if you notice, there are no compilation errors. In BC24, you can have two table extension to an existing table which is not in your extension, which is reference from a dependency that you're making, which is in this case base app, and they will not cause conflict. And the other thing is I can have the table as well as my extension in the same extension. I know it doesn't make sense why this is done, and we'll come to this, but let's reread that statement again. Here it says that you can do this and this. Now here are some rules that need to be followed, or things that need to be keep in mind. When you extend a table in the same app, like we are doing for the demo table that we have built, the fields and the keys defined in the table extension will be moved to the base table to prevent SQL join. So if you are on-prem, in SQL, you'll not see two objects, the actual table and the extension table. You will see one single table where the platform will automatically merge the table and table extension together, these two, and will show you one view. So from a SQL perspective, nothing is changing. It's just one table so that there is no unnecessary join, and it does not degrade the performance in terms of reading the data or writing the data into it. There is another rule. Since extension objects from a given app are applied to the target, the following extension object ID, the following compiler validation were introduced. Now let's understand what that is. The base object cannot reference the member of extension object, which means if I try to use this field in some way in this table, okay, so if I try to do, let's say, define a trigger, and let's say on insert, I can surely refer this field, but I should not be able to do rec.primary key. It is not referring, which is part of the table extension. So you cannot refer the table extension into the original table. That's that point. Let's come back to the last thing there. Extension object can refer members from other extension object in the same app only if the other extension object has the lower object ID. So we'll understand this also, what that does. So I'll remove this code and I'll copy this as it is, and let's add a new file. Okay, we'll call it as table extension 50103 sdh demo setup 2.al. Okay, and this I'll just paste it and say it 3, and this becomes 1, and this becomes primary key 2. Okay, and because it is already an ID, so I'll extend it. Okay, I'll move this file inside this folder. Okay, so now I have the actual table and two extension table to it. Now what I can do is, can I refer the primary key into this? Let's see. So if I try to do a on validate of this, on validate, and if I try to say rec.primary key, I can do that. Okay, and then something like this. But what if I try to do the same thing in the first one, in this one, and I say that rec.primary key 2 is equal to rec.primary key. I can still do that. Let's reread it. I guess I'm a little bit. Extension object can refer the member of other extension object in the same app only if other extension object has a lower object ID. So technically speaking, from the documentation, this should not have worked because this have an extension ID of 102 and this have an object ID of 103. It'll only work if it has a if the other extension has a lower object ID. We tried both way and it is working. So maybe this is something that will get baked up when the actual release kind of being introduced. So let's summarize this before we get into why Microsoft did this. Going forward, in Business Central 2024 release wave 1, we'll be able to have multiple table extension, also multiple extension object pointing to the same base object from Microsoft or an ISV within the same extension. And we can have the table and table extension together in the same app if needed. In case of extending a table which is part of the same app, for a user developer perspective, it'll be two different objects, but from a SQL perspective, the compiler will automatically merge those fields and keys into the same object, and you will only see one single table in your SQL Server. Now let's come down to why Microsoft would do that, because that's important. It's a little bit confusing to so many people, I'm pretty sure, still today. But what happens and why this is needed? So if you remember in the past videos, we did talk about the Foundation app, the new app that has been released, which is this symbol, the Business Foundation app. Now, when you think about this, the main reason seems that supporting to segregate these bigger apps into lower apps. So when Microsoft transitions some features from base app to Business Foundation, they would like to kind of create table extensions for the tables which should be part of the base app, but there's some area of that table which should actually fall into the Business Foundation. So while they are working on it to splitting that bigger app into smaller apps, as that seems from the Business Foundation, they'll need a way to have table and table extension coexisting at the same time. So in a large app where you want to separate it based on module, it's quite common to have the need to create table extensions or other extension object for a single base object in that particular module. And by utilizing this feature, that can be achieved. Now, how does that impact you as a developer? It should not. Anything that you are doing today will remain as it is. You don't have to. But if you are an app source developer who are building apps and they have a giant app, and you were thinking about breaking it into the logical pieces or maybe splitting it into the multiple apps, this feature will help you to kind of break that app slowly, as in module by module. So you can actually extend some certain areas of that app and then move it to a separate app. Now remember this, we only talked about table extension in this scenario, but you can apply the same logic for page extension or for any other extension object in the system. Hopefully with this video, I was able to make it very clear that how you can utilize this feature if you have a need of breaking the big apps into the smaller logical module wise apps. Otherwise, as a PTE developer, if you're one like me, then this feature does not impact how you're working today and you will not have an impact on it. But if you see something like this on an existing app that you're taking dependency on, don't worry about it. Remember this feature and the reason why this has been introduced. So let me know if there are any other scenario that you think that this feature will be helpful in Business Central. You know the drill. If you like the content, hit that like button. If you think this information is important and others, fellow developers in the community should know about it, then share this video on your social media and I'm pretty sure you have subscribed to the channel. If you haven't, please do subscribe to the channel. That helps us to have a better reach and more people joining this channel, so that we can share the knowledge as we have. If there is any other thing that kind of I missed into this particular feature, let me know into the comment section. I'm always open for learning from anyone who is ready to share his or her knowledge. So I'll see you sooner than later on the next video in the series. Till then, have a great day and keep learning.